Imagine this. A 42-story glass tower piercing the Manhattan skyline. Each floor worth more than most people will see in a lifetime. On the 41st floor sits Marcus Whitmore, a man whose net worth could buy small countries, yet whose heart feels emptier than the vacant lots he demolishes for profit. His corner office overlooks a city of 8 million souls. But Marcus has forgotten what it means to truly see another human being. Every morning at exactly 6:47 a.m., Marcus arrives at Whitmore Industries. His Italian leather shoes click against marble floors worth more than luxury cars. His assistants scatter like leaves before a storm, knowing that eye contact might trigger his legendary wrath. You see, Marcus built his empire on a simple philosophy. Emotion is weakness, attachment is liability, and human connection is nothing more than a business transaction waiting to happen. But here's where our story takes an unexpected turn. In this temple of corporate coldness, there's one person who moves through the shadows, invisible yet essential. Her name is Elena Vasquez, and she's been cleaning Marcus's office for 3 years. 3 years of arriving at 4 a.m. when the building sleeps. 3 years of scrubbing away the evidence of a life lived without love. 3 years of being treated like furniture, functional, forgettable, and utterly beneath notice. Elena is 34 years old, though the weight of her circumstances has aged her beyond her years. Her hands, cracked from industrial cleaning chemicals, tell a story Marcus has never bothered to read. When she moves to his office, dusting awards for business excellence and corporate leadership, she does so with the practiced invisibility of someone who learned long ago that being seen often means being hurt. What Marcus doesn't know, what he's never cared to know, is that Elena doesn't just disappear when she leaves his office. She doesn't vanish into some convenient void where the help lives when they're not serving their betters. No, Elena returns to a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, where 3 8-year-old boys wait for their mother with the patience of children who've learned that patience is the price of love. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me paint you the full picture of Marcus's world first, because understanding his emptiness makes what happens next so much more powerful. Marcus's penthouse apartment could house a small village. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcase views that real estate agents describe as breathtaking. Yet Marcus hasn't truly looked out those windows in years. His refrigerator, larger than some people's closets, contains nothing but energy drinks and takeout containers from restaurants where a single meal costs more than Elena makes in a week. The silence in his home is deafening. No laughter, no conversation, no life. Just a hum of expensive appliances, and the echo of footsteps on imported marble. His relationships, if you can call them that, are as cold as his business dealings. Women enter his life like stock options, evaluated for their potential return on investment, and discarded when they fail to perform to expectations. Marcus has convinced himself this makes him smart, efficient, evolved beyond the messy complications of human emotion. Now, let me tell you about Elena's world, because the contrast will break your heart and set up everything that's about to unfold. Every morning, Elena wakes up at 3:15 a.m. in a bed she shares with her youngest son, Diego, because there simply isn't space for anything else. The apartment, and I use that term generously, consists of one room divided by hanging sheets into sleeping areas. There's Miguel, the eldest by 12 minutes, whose glasses are held together with tape, because new ones aren't in the budget. There's Carlos, the dreamer, who draws pictures of houses with yards on scraps of paper he finds in trash cans. And there's Diego, the baby, who still asks when daddy is coming home, not understanding that some questions don't have answers that won't shatter a child's heart. Elena's morning routine is a symphony of silence. She moves through the apartment like a ghost, preparing for her day without waking her boys. A cold shower in a bathroom where the mirror has been cracked for 2 years. A breakfast of whatever's left from yesterday's meager dinner. Often nothing more than crackers and water. Then she kisses 3 sleeping foreheads and whispers promises she prays she can keep. Mommy will be home tonight. Mommy loves you. Everything will be okay. The truth is, nothing is okay. Elena works 3 jobs to keep their heads above water, and she's still drowning. From 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., she cleans office buildings. From 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., she works at a laundromat where the steam and chemicals have given her a persistent cough she can't afford to treat. From 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., she cleans houses and neighborhoods where people spend more on their dogs grooming than Elena makes in a month. By the time she returns home each night, her boys are usually asleep, having been watched by Mrs. Rodriguez, their 80-year-old neighbor who refuses payment but accepts Elena's homemade bread when there's flour to make it. Elena sits at their tiny table, sorting through bills like a general planning a battle she knows she can't win, and tries to figure out how to stretch $17 until Friday. But here's what makes Elena extraordinary, what makes her the hero of this story even before she knows she's in one. She never complains. Not once. When Miguel needs new glasses and she has to choose between his vision and the gas bill, she finds a way. When Carlos comes home crying because the other kids made fun of his shoes held together with duct tape and hope, she stays up all night cleaning them until they shine like new. When Diego asks why they can't have a Christmas tree like the pictures in his library book, she takes aluminum foil and twists it into the shape of a tree, telling him it's magical because it was made with love. You see, Elena understands something that Marcus has forgotten. Wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in the number of people who would miss you if you were gone. It's measured in the love you give when you have nothing else to offer. Now, if you're still with me, hit that like button. It helps more people discover stories like this. Trust me, you're going to want to see where this journey takes us. For 3 years, Marcus and Elena have existed in the same space, but different universes. He sees her as part of the building's infrastructure, as essential and invisible as the plumbing or electrical systems. She sees him as evidence that money can't buy happiness, though she's too busy surviving to judge him for his misery. But fate, as it often does, was preparing to throw these two worlds together in a way that would shatter everything both of them thought they knew about life, love, and what it means to be human. It started on a Tuesday that seemed like every other Tuesday. Marcus was staying late, not because he loved his work. Love was a luxury he convinced himself he couldn't afford, but because his empty penthouse felt more like a mausoleum with each passing day. As he sat in his leather chair, reviewing quarterly reports that would make him richer but not happier, he heard something that stopped him cold. Humming. Someone was humming in his office, and for reasons he couldn't explain, the sound hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't particularly beautiful humming. Elena's voice was rough from cleaning chemical fumes and exhaustion, but there was something in that simple melody, something he hadn't heard in years. Pure, uncomplicated contentment. Marcus looked up from his reports to see Elena dusting his bookshelf, and for the first time in 3 years, he actually saw her, really saw her. She was younger than he thought, with thick dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her uniform, a simple blue dress that had seen better years, was clean but worn. Her movements were efficient but gentle, as if she respected his space, even though he'd never shown her a moment's respect in return. But it was her face that stopped him, despite everything. The early morning hours, the physical labor, the obvious financial stress written in the careful way she moved. There was peace there, not happiness, exactly, but a kind of quiet strength that Marcus, with all his wealth and power, had never possessed. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice cutting to the comfortable silence like a blade. Elena jumped, nearly dropping her cleaning cloth. In 3 years, Marcus Whitmore had never spoken directly to her. Most days, he acted as if she were invisible. On the rare occasions when he acknowledged her presence, it was through curt instructions delivered to the cleaning supervisor. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore?" Elena's voice was soft, cautious. She learned that when powerful men suddenly noticed you, it rarely ended well. Marcus opened his mouth to ask her to be quieter, to stop the humming that was disrupting his concentration. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she held herself. Respectful but not servile, careful but not afraid. Maybe it was a realization that in 3 years, he'd never heard her voice before tonight. It's quite late," he said instead, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. "Yes, sir. I'm almost finished with your office. I can come back tomorrow if you prefer." "No, that's—" Marcus struggled with unfamiliar territory. Was he actually having a conversation with his cleaning lady? "What I mean is, don't you have somewhere to be? Family waiting at home." Elena's face flickered with something. Surprise, maybe, that Marcus Whitmore was acknowledging she had a life beyond his office. "Yes, sir. My boys will be asleep by now, but yes." "Boys." The question slipped out before Marcus could stop it, and he was as surprised as Elena by his curiosity. When had he last been curious about another person's life? Elena smiled then, just a small curve of her lips, but it transformed her entire face. 3 boys. There are 8. 3 8-year-olds? Marcus couldn't hide his shock. That must be challenging. "They're good boys," Elena said simply, and in those 3 words, Marcus heard a lifetime of love, sacrifice, and bone-deep exhaustion. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Marcus realized he had no idea how to have a normal conversation with another human being. His interactions were either business transactions or orders given to subordinates. This strange middle ground, genuine curiosity about another person's life, was completely foreign territory. "Well," Marcus said finally, retreating to familiar formality, "don't let me keep you." "Yes, sir. Good night, Mr. Whitmore." Elena returned to her cleaning, but the humming didn't resume. Marcus tried to return to his reports, but the numbers on the page might as well have been hieroglyphics. His mind kept drifting to Elena's smile when she mentioned her boys, the quiet pride in her voice when she called them good. When Elena finished and left his office with a quiet good night, Marcus found himself walking to his window and looking down at the street below. He watched Elena emerge in the building and begin her journey to the subway station, her tired walk somehow still carrying dignity. For the first time in years, Marcus Whitmore was curious about something that couldn't make him money. If this story is touching your heart so far, don't just click away. Subscribe, because you'll want to hear how these journeys end. And trust me, this one is worth it. The next morning, Marcus arrived at his office to find everything exactly as it should be, spotless, organized, impersonal. But something had changed in him during that brief conversation with Elena. He found himself noticing things he'd never seen before. The way she arranged his papers with careful precision, how she never moved his personal items, even a fraction of an inch from where he'd left them, the small touches that showed she took pride in her work despite being treated as invisible. For 3 weeks, Marcus found excuses to stay late, hoping to catch Elena during her cleaning routine. Their conversations were brief and careful. She was clearly wary of the sudden attention from her employer, and he was navigating unfamiliar emotional territory. But gradually, he learned small details about her life. Her boys were triplets. They loved soccer, but had never been able to afford to join a team. They were honor students despite attending an underfunded school where textbooks were older than their teacher. Each revelation hit Marcus like a small earthquake, shaking the foundation of his carefully constructed worldview. How could someone with so little be raising 3 successful children? How could she maintain such dignity while working 3 jobs? How could she smile when talking about sons she barely had time to see? The questions consumed him in a way that no business deal ever had. It was on a Friday evening in November when Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Elena had finished cleaning his office and was gathering her supplies when Marcus did something unprecedented. He offered to walk her to the elevator. "Oh, that's not necessary, Mr. Whitmore," Elena said, clearly flustered by this break in their 3-year routine. "I'm heading out anyway," Marcus lied smoothly. He'd planned to work until midnight, as he did every Friday, to avoid going home to his empty penthouse. As they rode down in silence, Marcus felt his heart hammering in his chest. He was a man who negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, who had fired thousands of employees with the emotional investment of ordering coffee. But walking beside this quiet woman, he felt more nervous than he had since childhood. The elevator opened onto the building's opulent lobby, all marble and gold and crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. Marcus's driver was waiting with a Bentley, as he did every evening. "Good night, Mr. Whitmore," Elena said, turning toward the subway entrance. "Good night," Marcus replied, watching her walk away. Then, driven by an impulse he couldn't name or control, Marcus made a decision that went against every instinct he'd cultivated over 20 years of ruthless business success. "Change of plans," he told his driver. "Follow that woman, but stay back. Don't let her see us." His driver, trained in the art of discretion that high-end service required, simply nodded. "Yes, sir." What followed was the most surreal hour of Marcus's life. His $250,000 car crawled through Queens traffic, following Elena as she took 2 buses and walked 6 blocks to reach her neighborhood. Marcus watched through tinted windows as she stopped at a corner grocery store, where she counted coins before buying a single can of soup and a loaf of bread. He saw her speak to the store owner, saw the man shake his head, saw Elena's shoulders slump slightly before she squared them again and walked out with just the bread. "Sir?" his driver asked as Elena entered a building that Marcus generously would have called run down. The brick facade was crumbling, windows were cracked and covered with plastic sheeting, and the front door hung slightly askew on its hinges. "Wait here," Marcus said, getting out of the car for the first time in years without having a specific destination in mind. He approached Elena's building with the fascination of an anthropologist discovering a lost civilization. The hallway smelled of cooking food, crying babies, and dreams deferred. Marcus climbed 3 flights of stairs, following the sound of Elena's voice, until he reached a door marked 3B. What he heard next stopped his heart. Mommy's home." The pure joy in those voices, 3 distinct variations of the same excitement, hit Marcus like a physical force. Through the thin door, he heard Elena's tired voice transform into something magical. "Hello, my loves. Were you good for Mrs. Rodriguez? We did homework first, just like you said. Miguel helped me with math. Carlos drew you another picture. Did you eat dinner?" Elena's voice carried the weight of a mother who knew the answer might break her heart. "Mrs. Rodriguez made us beans and rice. We saved some for you." Marcus pressed himself against the hallway wall, knowing he was invading their privacy, but unable to walk away. Through the thin walls, he heard the sound of a family. Children chattering about their day, Elena asking about homework and soccer practice they couldn't afford, the rustle of papers and the scrape of chairs around what must be a very small table. Then he heard something that shattered his heart into 1,000 pieces. "Mommy, why are you crying?" "I'm not crying, baby. Mommy's just tired." "You work too much, Mommy. We know you work hard for us." "We love you, Mommy." Marcus heard Elena's voice crack as she replied, "I love you too, my beautiful boys, more than all the stars in the sky." Standing in that dim hallway, Marcus Whitmore, a man who controlled vast wealth and wielded enormous power, began to cry. Not the controlled, strategic tears he might use in a business negotiation, but raw, helpless sobs that came from a place deep inside him that he thought was permanently sealed. He was crying for Elena, who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford to feed her children properly. He was crying for 3 8-year-old boys who saved dinner for their mother and did homework without being asked because they understood, with the wisdom of children who'd grown up too fast, that their love was the only gift they could give her. But most of all, he was crying for himself, for the man he'd become, for the life he'd wasted, for the simple human connections he rejected in pursuit of wealth that suddenly felt as worthless as monopoly money. What would you have done in this situation? Tell me in the comments below. Would you have walked away, or would you have done what Marcus did next? Marcus stood in that hallway for another 20 minutes, listening to sounds of family that was rich in everything that mattered and poor in everything the world said was important. He heard Elena helping with homework she probably didn't understand, singing lullabies in Spanish that made the children giggle, reading bedtime stories from library books whose pages crackled with age and use. When the apartment finally fell quiet, Marcus made his way back downstairs to his waiting Bentley. His driver, trained not to ask questions, noticed his employer's red eyes and tear-stained face, but said nothing. "Home, sir?" Marcus looked back at Elena's building, at the dim lights and windows where families were settling in for the night, at a world he'd never bothered to notice despite driving through it every day. "Yes," he said quietly. "Home." But as the Bentley pulled away from the curb, Marcus knew that his definition of home, his definition of everything, had just changed forever. The ride back to Manhattan passed in silence. Marcus stared out the window at the city he thought he owned, seeing it with new eyes. Every homeless person on every corner, every bodega worker pulling a late shift, every mother pushing a stroller down a cracked sidewalk. They all had stories, all had families, all had dreams and struggles and moments of joy that his money couldn't buy or destroy. By the time the Bentley pulled up to his building, Marcus had made a decision. He didn't know what he was going to do with this new knowledge about Elena and her boys, but he knew he couldn't simply return to his old life and pretend he'd never heard those children's voices, never seen their mother's quiet strength in the face of overwhelming odds. That night, for the first time in years, Marcus Whitmore couldn't sleep. He paced his penthouse, looking out at the city lights and thinking about 3 boys sleeping in a 1-bedroom apartment, about a mother who worked herself to exhaustion for children she barely had time to see, about love that existed independent of bank accounts and stock portfolios. He was a man accustomed to solving problems with money, but this wasn't a problem money could solve. This was about human dignity, about family bonds, about the kind of wealth that couldn't be measured or purchased. And for the first time in his adult life, Marcus Whitmore didn't know what to do next. Don't just watch. Be part of this family by subscribing, so you never miss these powerful stories. What happens next will challenge everything you think you know about success and failure. Monday morning arrived with the weight of revelation. Marcus sat in his office, unable to concentrate on quarterly projections or merger proposals. Every time he looked at his desk, the desk Elena cleaned with such care every morning, he saw her tired hands, heard her children's voices echoing through thin apartment walls. By Wednesday, he'd made another decision that defied every business instinct he'd ever developed. He was going to follow Elena through her entire day, not just home. He needed to understand the full scope of her life, the complete picture of sacrifice he'd witnessed in fragments. This time, Marcus drove himself in an unremarkable rental car, feeling more like a private detective than a Fortune 500 CEO. He arrived at his building at 6 a.m. and waited. At 6:47, Elena emerged from the service elevator, her cleaning supplies in a worn canvas bag, her face already showing the exhaustion that would only deepen as the day progressed. Marcus followed her to her next job, the laundromat where she worked from 9 to 3. He parked across the street and watched through the window as Elena lifted industrial-sized loads of laundry, her slight frame struggling with weights that should have required 2 people. The steam from the machines had turned the air thick and oppressive. Marcus could see the sweat on Elena's forehead even from across the street. During her lunch break, Elena didn't eat lunch. Instead, she walked to a nearby check-cashing store where Marcus watched her cash her paycheck from the cleaning service. The fees took a significant bite out of her earnings, but people without bank accounts, people living paycheck to paycheck, didn't have the luxury of free checking that Marcus had taken for granted his entire life. After cashing her check, Elena walked to a discount store where she spent 27 minutes comparing prices on a package of socks. 27 minutes to decide whether her boys needed new socks more than she needed to keep $3 for tomorrow's bus fare. She bought the socks. The afternoon shift was at houses and neighborhoods where Marcus had friends, or what passed for friends in his world. He watched Elena scrub toilets in homes where the monthly grocery budget exceeded her annual income, watched her clean windows that overlooked gardens that cost more to maintain than she made in 6 months. At one house, Marcus witnessed something that made his hands clench into fists. Elena was cleaning the kitchen while the homeowner, a woman whose husband Marcus knew from the country club, loudly discussed Elena's work with a friend, as if Elena were deaf rather than simply invisible. "I don't know why they can't learn to speak proper English," the woman was saying, her voice carrying the casual cruelty of someone who'd never had to clean another person's toilet. And they're always asking for time off for their children, as if we don't have lives too. Elena continued cleaning, her face carefully neutral, but Marcus saw the way her shoulders tensed, saw the slight tremor in her hands as she wiped down counters that were already spotless. By 6 p.m., Elena was rushing to catch a bus that would take her home to her boys. Marcus, following his rental car, arrived at her building just as she was walking up the front steps. This time, he didn't stop at the entrance. This time, he was going to find the courage to do what he should have done years ago. Marcus climbed the 3 flights of stairs and knocked on door 3B. The apartment fell silent. After a moment, Elena's voice came through the door, cautious and confused. "Who is it?" "It's Marcus. Marcus Whitmore. From the office." The silence that followed was so complete Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. After what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, the door opened a crack, revealing Elena's shocked face. "Mr. Whitmore? What? How did you?" "I followed you," Marcus said simply. "I needed to see. I needed to understand." Elena's eyes darted behind her, where Marcus could hear 3 young voices whispering urgently in Spanish. She stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind her. "I don't understand. Why would you follow me?" Marcus looked at this woman, this small, exhausted woman who somehow managed to be strong enough to carry her entire family on her shoulders, and felt every carefully constructed wall around his heart crumble. "Because I've been blind," he said. "For 3 years, I've watched you clean my office, and I never saw you. I never saw that you were killing yourself to take care of your children. I never saw that you're twice the person I'll ever be, and I'm worth $100 million. Elena's face was a mixture of confusion, fear, and something else. Hope, maybe, though she was clearly afraid to trust it. "Mr. Whitmore, I don't understand what you want from me. I want to help." The words came out before Marcus had fully formed the thought, but as soon as he said them, he knew they were true. For the first time in decades, he wanted something that wasn't about profit margins or market share. He wanted to fix this, to use his resources for something that mattered. "Help." Elena's voice was barely above a whisper. "Your boys, they need things. You need things. I have money sitting in accounts earning interest while your children go to bed hungry." Elena's face transformed, and not in the way Marcus had expected. Instead of gratitude, he saw something fierce and proud that made him step backward. "We don't need charity, Mr. Whitmore. It's not charity, it's—" "What is it then?" Elena's voice rose slightly. Then she caught herself, glancing at the door behind which her children were listening. When she spoke again, her voice was controlled but steel-edged. "You followed me home. You watched me work. You saw how we live. And now you want to throw money at us to make yourself feel better?" Marcus felt as if he'd been slapped. "That's not, isn't it?" Elena stepped closer to him, and Marcus saw fire in her eyes that his boardroom adversaries would have recognized and feared. "You want to know what we need, Mr. Whitmore? We need decent-paying jobs. We need health care we can afford. We need schools that don't have to choose between books and heat. We need a world where working 3 jobs means you can feed your children, not just barely keep them alive." She paused, breathing hard, and Marcus realized he was seeing Elena Vasquez. Not the invisible cleaning lady, not the grateful recipient of his largesse, but the woman herself, in all her complexity and strength and righteous anger. "But most of all," Elena continued, her voice dropping to something dangerous and hurt, "we need to be seen as human beings, not projects, not feel-good stories for rich men who want to buy their way into heaven. We need respect." The hallway fell silent, except for the sound of their breathing and the distant murmur of television sets and family conversations from other apartments. Marcus stood there, feeling smaller than he had since childhood, understanding for the first time that his money, his solution to every problem he'd ever faced, was not just inadequate here, it was insulting. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "You're right. I'm sorry." Elena studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether his apology was genuine or just another manipulation. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why now? Why do you suddenly care?" Marcus leaned against the hallway wall, feeling every one of his 42 years. "Because I heard them. Your boys. Last Friday night. I heard them saving dinner for you, heard them tell you they love you, and I realized I've never had anyone in my life who would do that. I've never had anyone who would miss me if I were gone." He looked at Elena, this woman who had everything he'd ever wanted and nothing he'd ever valued. "I'm 42 years old and I'm completely alone. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and I've never felt as rich as you sounded that night, sitting around your table with your boys." Elena's expression softened slightly, though her guard remained up. "That doesn't give you the right to invade our privacy." "No," Marcus agreed. "It doesn't, and I'm sorry for that too." From behind the door, a small voice called out in careful English, "Mommy, is everything okay?" Elena turned toward the door, her face immediately transforming from warrior to mother. Everything's fine, Miguel. I'll be right there. She turned back to Marcus, and he saw her making a decision. Mr. Whitmore, I appreciate that you see us now, but we're not your redemption story. We're not going to fix whatever's broken in your life. I know, Marcus said quietly, but maybe I could stop being part of what's broken in yours. Elena stared at him for a long moment, and Marcus held his breath, feeling as if his entire future hinged on whatever she was about to say. Finally, she spoke. What does that mean? Marcus realized he didn't have an answer. He'd built his entire life around having answers, around knowing exactly what he wanted and how to get it. But standing in this hallway, facing this woman who just stripped away every illusion he'd ever had about himself, he had no idea what came next. I don't know, he admitted. I honestly don't know. For the first time since she'd opened the door, Elena almost smiled. Well, she said, that's probably the most honest thing you've ever said to me. The door behind her opened a crack, and 3 pairs of curious brown eyes peeked out. Marcus caught a glimpse of the apartment beyond. Furniture that belonged in a thrift store, walls that needed paint, but pictures drawn by children's hands taped everywhere, turning poverty into something that looked remarkably like home. Boys, Elena said without turning around. Back to your homework. Is that the man from your work, Mommy? One of the voices asked. Elena looked at Marcus, a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly. Yes, Miguel. This is Mr. Whitmore. Hello, Mr. Whitmore, came 3 carefully polite voices from behind the door. Hello, Marcus managed, his voice catching slightly. The door closed again, but not before Marcus saw 3 faces that would haunt him forever. Intelligent, curious, beautiful children who deserved so much more than the world was giving them. Elena, Marcus said, using her first name for the first time. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to help without insulting you. But I can't go back to pretending I don't know. I can't go back to not caring. Elena studied his face for another long moment. Then don't, she said finally. Don't go back. But don't think you can buy your way forward either. If you really want to help, if you really want to change things, it's going to take more than writing checks. It's going to take actually changing. She paused, her hand on the door handle. And Mr. Whitmore, next time you want to understand someone's life, try asking instead of stalking. You might be surprised by what people are willing to share with someone who actually wants to listen. With that, Elena Vasquez went back inside to her boys, leaving Marcus Whitmore alone in a dim hallway, more lost and more hopeful than he'd ever been in his life. If you're still watching, you understand this isn't just a story about wealth and poverty. It's about the courage to change. Hit that like button if Elena's words hit you as hard as they hit Marcus. The elevator ride down from Elena's apartment felt like a descent into purgatory. Marcus sat in his rental car for nearly an hour, staring up at the dim lights of apartment 3B, listening to Elena's words echo in his mind. If you really want to help, if you really want to change things, it's going to take more than writing checks. It's going to take actually changing. But how do you change a life built on 42 years of emotional isolation? How do you learn to be human when you spent decades perfecting the art of being a machine? Marcus drove back to Manhattan in a daze, but instead of going to his penthouse, he found himself walking the streets of a city. Really walking them, not just passing through in tinted window luxury. He saw the homeless veterans he'd stepped over for years, the single mothers working late-night shifts in convenience stores, the elderly immigrants counting coins for subway rides. Elena was right. These weren't problems money alone could solve. These were systemic failures that required systemic change. The next morning, Marcus did something unprecedented. He called in sick. Then he spent the day in the New York Public Library. Not the marble and gold donor rooms he'd attended fundraisers in, but the public floors where Elena's boys probably did their homework. He read about income inequality, about the working poor, about the impossible mathematics of survival on minimum wage. He learned that Elena wasn't unique. Millions of parents worked multiple jobs and still couldn't afford basic necessities. Millions of children went to bed hungry in the richest country in human history. The statistics were devastating. But more devastating was the realization that Marcus had the power to change some of these realities and had chosen for decades to ignore them. But Elena's challenge haunted him. Don't think you can buy your way forward. If he really wanted to help, he had to change, not just his giving habits, but himself. That evening, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week earlier. He went back to Elena's building, but this time he didn't hide in the hallway eavesdropping. This time, he knocked on door 3B at 7 p.m. when he knew the boys would be awake. Elena opened the door, surprise and wariness flickering across her face. Mr. Whitmore? I've been thinking about what you said. Marcus began. About asking instead of stalking. About listening instead of assuming. I was wondering, would you and your boys like to have dinner? Somewhere public. Somewhere comfortable for you. I'd like to hear their stories, not just watch from the shadows. Elena hesitated, clearly torn between suspicion and curiosity. Why? Because you were right. I've been treating you like a project instead of a person. I'd like to try again, if you'll let me. As friends, maybe, if that's possible. Behind Elena, Marcus heard three young voices whispering urgently in Spanish. Elena turned and had a rapid conversation with her boys before facing Marcus again. They want to know if you're the rich man from Mommy's work, who has a big building. Marcus almost smiled. Yes, that's me. More whispering, then Elena's expression softened slightly. Miguel wants to know if you've ever been to McDonald's. This time Marcus did smile. Not in about 30 years, but I'd love to go. And so began the most important business meeting of Marcus Whitmore's life, conducted over Happy Meals in a McDonald's in Queens. Miguel, the eldest by 12 minutes, adjusted his taped glasses and studied Marcus with the seriousness of a judge. Mommy says you're very rich. I am, Marcus replied honestly. Are you happy? Carlos, the artist, asked around about a chicken nugget. The question stopped Marcus cold. When was the last time someone had asked him that? When was the last time he'd even considered it? No, Marcus said finally. I'm not happy. Are you? Sometimes, Diego, the youngest, piped up. When Mommy's home and we're all together. But not when Mommy cries because there's no food. Elena's face flushed with embarrassment, but Marcus leaned forward, giving Diego his full attention. That must be scary when Mommy's sad. We try to make her feel better, Miguel said. We draw pictures, and we help with chores, and we don't ask for things we can't have. Marcus felt his throat tighten. These 8-year-old boys had more emotional intelligence than he developed in 4 decades. What do you want to be when you grow up? Marcus asked. A doctor, Miguel said immediately, so I can help people who are sick, and they won't have to worry about money for medicine. An artist, Carlos said. I want to paint pictures that make people happy. A superhero, Diego announced, so I can protect Mommy from working so hard. Marcus looked at Elena, who was fighting back tears as she listened to her son's dreams. Dreams that seemed impossible given their circumstances, but that they held on to with the fierce hope of childhood. Those are beautiful dreams, Marcus said. Important dreams. What did you want to be when you were our age? Miguel asked. Marcus tried to remember. Before the boarding schools that taught him emotion was weakness, before the business school that taught him profit was the only measure of success, before the years that had turned him into a machine designed to accumulate wealth. What had 8-year-old Marcus wanted? I wanted to build things, he said slowly. Not just buildings, but communities, places where families could be happy. You could still do that, Carlos said with the matter-of-fact wisdom of a child. You're not dead yet. Elena covered her mouth to hide a smile, but Marcus saw it and felt something warm bloom in his chest, the unfamiliar sensation of making someone happy. What would you have said to these boys? Comment below. I read every single one, and your stories matter to me as much as this one does. After dinner, Marcus walked Elena and the boys to their building. The boys chatted excitedly about their first time eating with a real rich person, debating whether Marcus's car was as fancy as the ones in movies. They like you, Elena said quietly as they climbed the stairs to 3B. I like them too. They're remarkable kids. Elena, you should be proud. I am. Elena paused at her door. Mr. Whitmore, Marcus, thank you for tonight, for seeing them as children, not just statistics. Thank you for giving me the chance. Elena hesitated, then made a decision that would change everything. Would you like to come in? For coffee? It's not much, but Marcus's penthouse apartment could have housed 50 families. It had marble floors and crystal chandeliers, and views that real estate agents call priceless. But walking into Elena's one-room home felt like stepping into a palace. The walls were covered with the boys' artwork. Crayon drawings of houses with yards, family portraits where everyone was smiling, superhero adventures where the heroes looked suspiciously like their mother. The furniture was secondhand and worn, but everything was spotless and arranged with care. Books from the library were stacked neatly on a crate that served as a coffee table. Homework was spread across a card table that had seen better decades. This is beautiful, Marcus said and meant it. It's small, Elena said apologetically. No, Marcus replied, looking around at evidence of a life lived with love and purpose. It's perfect. The boys showed Marcus their treasures, collections of interesting rocks, pictures they'd drawn, a soccer ball with more patches than original material. They explained their homework and their dreams and their worries with the openness of children who'd learned that their mother's friends were safe. As the evening wound down and Elena tucked her boys into their shared bed, Marcus sat at the tiny kitchen table and felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood, belonging. When Elena returned from saying goodnight prayers with the boys, she found Marcus staring at a drawing Carlos had made, a picture of their apartment, but with garden outside and a big tree in the yard. He draws that a lot, Elena said softly. A house with a yard where they could play. Elena, Marcus said carefully, I want to ask you something, but I need you to know that whatever your answer is, It won't change anything between us. I'm not trying to buy friendship or assuage guilt. Elena sat down across from him. What is it? Let me help you find a better job. Not charity. A real job that pays what you're worth. I know people, I have connections. You're intelligent, hardworking, trustworthy. You deserve better than cleaning offices at 4 in the morning. Elena was quiet for a long moment. What kind of job? I don't know yet. What would you want to do if you could do anything? Elena's laugh was soft but bitter. I want to be a teacher. Before life happened. I was studying education when I got pregnant with the boys. Their father left. I had to drop out to work. And dreams don't pay rent. They could, Marcus said quietly. It would take time, but you could finish your degree. There are programs for working parents, scholarships, child care assistance. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be possible. Elena stared at him. Why would you do that? What do you get out of it? Marcus thought about his empty penthouse, his hollow achievements, his decades of loneliness disguised as success. I get to learn what it feels like to use my advantages for something that matters, he said honestly. I get to be part of something real for the first time in my adult life. Elena was quiet for so long that Marcus began to worry he'd overstepped again. But when she finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. I haven't let myself dream about teaching in years. I couldn't afford to hope for something that felt impossible. It's not impossible, Marcus said. Difficult, yes, but not impossible. Elena wiped her eyes and looked at Marcus with something that might have been trust. If we do this, if I let you help, it's not charity. It's investment. In me, in my boys, in the idea that everyone deserves a chance to reach their potential. Agreed? Marcus extended his hand across the table. Agreed. Partners. Elena shook his hand, her grip firm and sure. Partners. As Marcus walked home that night, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Purpose. Not the hollow satisfaction of closing a profitable deal, but the deep contentment that comes from being useful to someone who matters. But the real transformation was just beginning. This is where everything changes. Not just for Elena and her boys, but for all of us watching. If this story has changed how you see success and failure, subscribe and hit that notification bell. You're part of a community that believes in the power of human connection. 6 months later, Marcus Whitmore was a different man. Not in the superficial ways that money could buy, but in the fundamental ways that only love and purpose can create. He'd kept his promise to Elena, but not in the way either of them had expected. Instead of using his connections to find her a job, Marcus had done something revolutionary. He'd examined his own company's practices and discovered that Whitmore Industries was part of the problem. The cleaning service that employed Elena was one of dozens of contractors that Marcus's company used to keep labor costs low and avoid providing benefits. Workers like Elena were paid poverty wages, while Marcus's company boasted record profits to shareholders. So Marcus began to change that. First, he brought the cleaning services in-house, making Elena and dozens of other invisible workers official Whitmore Industries employees with living wages, health insurance, and educational benefits. The decision cost the company millions in the first year, but Marcus discovered something his business school professors had never taught him. Treating employees will actually improve productivity and reduce turnover. Elena was promoted to head of facilities management. Not as a favor, but because her years of working multiple jobs had given her organizational skills that MBA programs couldn't teach. She enrolled in night classes to finish her education degree, with full tuition support and flexible scheduling that allowed her to be home with her boys. But the most profound changes were in Marcus himself. He'd started spending his evenings differently. Instead of staying late at the office to avoid his empty penthouse, he began visiting Elena and the boys twice a week. Not as their benefactor, but as their friend. He helped with homework he hadn't thought about in 30 years, played soccer in the small courtyard behind their building, and learned to find joy in simple moments he'd forgotten existed. Miguel, with his serious demeanor and fierce intelligence, became Marcus's chess partner. They would play game after game, while Miguel explained his dreams of becoming a doctor who treated patients regardless of their ability to pay. Carlos, the artist, transformed Marcus's understanding of beauty. The boys saw magic in discarded materials, creating masterpieces from bottle caps and cardboard that put Marcus's expensive art collection to shame. Carlos taught Marcus that creativity flourished in constraints, not abundance. Diego, the youngest and most empathetic, became Marcus's guide to emotional intelligence. This 8-year-old boy could read people's feelings with uncanny accuracy, offering comfort with the instinctive wisdom of someone who'd learned early that love was the most powerful force in the world. You know what's beautiful about this? These boys didn't need to be saved. They needed to be seen. How many children in your life are waiting for someone to see their potential? Tell me in the comments about a young person who inspired you. The real test came 8 months after that first dinner at McDonald's, when Elena made an announcement that stopped Marcus's heart. I've been accepted to the accelerated teaching program at Queens College, she said during one of their Wednesday evening homework sessions. Full scholarship, plus a stipend for living expenses. I can finish my degree in 18 months. Marcus felt a stab of panic that surprised him with its intensity. "That's wonderful," he managed. "Congratulations." "There's just one problem," Elena continued, watching Marcus's face carefully. "The program requires a full course load plus student teaching. I'll need to quit my job at Whitmore Industries." Marcus realized that somewhere along the way, Elena and her boys had become the center of his life. The thought of not seeing them regularly, of not being part of their daily routine, felt like losing his family. "We'll miss you," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Elena smiled, the same smile that had first made him realize she was human, not furniture. "Marcus, did you really think we'd disappear just because I wasn't cleaning your office anymore?" The relief that flooded through Marcus was so intense, he had to sit down. I wasn't sure." "T.O. Marcus," Miguel said, using the honorary uncle title the boys had adopted for him. "Your family now?" "Family doesn't disappear." Family. Marcus had forgotten what the word meant, but these three boys and their extraordinary mother had taught him that family isn't about blood, or law, or obligation. Family is about showing up, about caring, about being present for life's small moments and big challenges. Elena graduated summa cum laude from her teaching program. Marcus was there in the audience, cheering louder than parent a third his age, bursting with pride for a woman who refused to let circumstances define her potential. She got a job teaching third grade at an elementary school in Queens. Not because Marcus pulled strings, but because her student teaching evaluations were exemplary and her passion for education was evident to anyone who met her. Miguel, Carlos, and Diego started fourth grade that fall. They were still the same thoughtful, creative, compassionate boys they'd always been, but now they attended school with full bellies and new clothes and the confidence that comes from knowing someone believes in your dreams. Don't just watch this transformation. Be part of it. Subscribe because stories like this remind us that we all have the power to change lives, including our own. But the most unexpected transformation was in Marcus's business philosophy. He began to measure success differently, looking at employee satisfaction alongside profit margins, community impact alongside shareholder returns. Whitmore Industries became known for its ethical practices and living wages, attracting top talent who wanted to work for a company that valued humanity alongside profitability. Marcus's personal life changed too. His penthouse, one a monument to isolation, became a gathering place. Elena and the boys had dinner there every Sunday, filling the empty spaces with laughter and conversation, and the comfortable chaos of family life. Other employees began to see Marcus as more than just a boss. He was someone who asked about their children, remembered their birthdays, and created policies that supported work-life balance. The loneliness that had defined Marcus's existence for decades became a memory, replaced by the rich complexity of human connection. But perhaps the most beautiful change was the simplest one. Every morning at 7 a.m., Marcus would walk to the offices of Whitmore Industries, greeting employees by name, asking about their families, acknowledging their contributions. And every morning, when he reached his office, he would find Elena there. Not as a cleaning lady, but as a friend stopping by before heading to her classroom. "Good morning, Marcus," she would say. "Good morning, Elena. How are my boys?" "They're your boys now, too," she would reply with a smile. "They're perfect." 1 year after that first conversation in his office, Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He established the Elena Vasquez Foundation, dedicated to providing educational opportunities and support services for working parents. But more than that, he stepped back from day-to-day operations at Whitmore Industries to focus on philanthropy full-time. "Are you sure about this?" Elena asked when he told her about his decision. "You're walking away from everything you built." Marcus looked around Elena's classroom, where her students' artwork covered every wall and where learning happened with joy instead of fear. He thought about Miguel, now 11 and already accepted into a prestigious science program. He thought about Carlos, whose art was being displayed in community centers across Queens. He thought about Diego, who'd organized a fundraiser at school to help homeless families. "I'm not walking away from everything I built," Marcus said. "I'm finally building something that matters." If you're watching this and thinking about the Elena in your life, the person whose struggles you've overlooked, whose potential you've underestimated, whose humanity you've forgotten to acknowledge, this is your moment. This is your chance to see them, really see them. 5 years later, Marcus Whitmore was a different kind of wealthy man. His bank account was smaller, but his life was infinitely richer. He was Uncle Marcus to not just Elena's boys, but to dozens of children whose families had been touched by the foundation's work. He was a mentor to working parents pursuing education, a champion for living wages and humane workplace policies, and a testament to the idea that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. Elena, now a master teacher whose innovative methods were being studied by education professionals nationwide, often spoke at foundation events. She would always begin her remarks the same way. 5 years ago, a man followed me home from work. It sounds like the beginning of a horror story, but it was actually the beginning of a love story. Not romantic love, but the kind of love that exists when one human being truly sees another and chooses to act on that recognition. On a warm evening in May, Marcus sat in the audience at Miguel's middle school graduation, watching Elena's eldest son receive awards for academic excellence and community service. Carlos and Diego flanked Marcus, pointing proudly at their brother on stage. "Tio Marcus," Diego whispered, now 13 and wise beyond his years. "Do you ever miss being just rich instead of happy?" Marcus laughed, pulling Diego closer in a sideways hug. "I was never just rich, Mijo. I was just empty. There's a big difference." As Miguel walked across the stage to receive his diploma, he caught Marcus's eye and smiled. The same brilliant smile his mother had shown that first night when she talked about her boys. In that smile, Marcus saw the future. Miguel would become the doctor he dreamed of being. Carlos would create art that changed lives. Diego would indeed become the superhero he'd always wanted to be. But more than that, Marcus saw the past transformed. Every choice he'd made to isolate himself, every moment he'd chosen wealth over humanity, every relationship he discarded in pursuit of profit, all of it had been leading him to this moment, to this family, to this understanding of what success actually meant. This is what I want you to remember as you go back to your life, your job, your daily routine. Every person you encounter, the janitor, the cashier, the person asking for change on the corner, has a story, has dreams, has children who love them, and struggles that would break your heart if you knew them. You have the power to see them, to acknowledge their humanity, to be part of their story in ways that matter. After the graduation ceremony, Elena and Marcus walked together while the boys ran ahead, still energized by the celebration. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't followed me that night?" Elena asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. "I think I would have died wealthy and empty, leaving behind nothing but money that couldn't buy love or meaning or memory. And I would have kept working myself to death, convinced that sacrifice was the same thing as love." They walked in comfortable silence for a moment, watching three boys who had taught them both that love multiplies when it's shared, that families are built from choice as much as blood, that the richest life is one spent in service to others. "Marcus," Elena said finally, "thank you for seeing us." "Elena," Marcus replied, "thank you for teaching me how to see." As they reached Elena's building, the same crumbling structure where Marcus had first heard the voices that would change his life, he looked up at the window of apartment 3B. The boys had long since moved to a house with a yard, but Elena kept the old apartment as a reminder how far they'd traveled and how precious every step of that journey had been. "Here's what I need you to do right now. Before you click away, before you scroll to the next video, before you forget the feeling the story gave you, I need you to think about one person in your life who deserves to be seen. One person whose story you've never asked about, whose struggles you've overlooked, whose humanity you've taken for granted. Think about them, and then do something about it. A conversation, a gesture, an acknowledgement that they matter. And if the story changed something in you, if it made you see your own life differently, don't let that feeling fade. Subscribe to this channel, because we're building a community of people who believe that every human being has value, that every story matters, that love and connection are the only wealth that truly endures. Hit that notification bell so you never miss these stories that remind us who we can become when we choose love over indifference, connection over isolation, humanity over profit. But most importantly, don't just watch these stories. Live them. Be the Marcus in someone else's life. Be the person who sees, who cares, who acts on the recognition that we're all connected, we're all struggling, and we all deserve to be loved for exactly who we are. The last image was of Marcus and Elena's family, because that's what they become, a family built on choice and love and mutual respect, gathered around the dinner table in Elena's house with a yard, sharing a meal and stories, and the kind of laughter that fills up all the empty spaces in a human heart. Because in the end, this isn't just a story about a CEO and a cleaning lady. It's a story about all of us, about the choice we make every single day to see each other as human beings worthy of love, respect, and a chance to reach our potential. It's a story about coming home to ourselves and each other. And it's a story that's still being written, one choice at a time, one conversation at a time, one act of love at a time. The story continues with you. Make it count.